Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday show. There's a winter storm warning out for the Brooks Range here, the northern Brooks Range, for 6 to 8 inches of snow, with the heaviest amounts falling overnight tonight, and then that'll become lighter during the morning hours. And then there's winter weather advisories here in the yellow shaded areas. Southeastern Brooks Range looking for 4 to 7 inches of snow, and lighter amounts back to the west and southwest. And then we've got wind advisories here for the for the passes of the Alaska Range west of the Toke Cutoff. Look for those winds tonight and into tomorrow, actually increasing later tonight up to 60 miles an hour in gusts, and that continuing through the day tomorrow. Looking at the satellite imagery from yesterday, a lot of clouds here streaming eastward across southern Alaska, Gulf of Alaska into the southeast coast. Not a bad day here over the northeast interior areas. Back to the west, a lot of clouds gathering here over the Bering Sea with a low pressure area right about in this position here, all taking off to the northeast. And see, as that progresses along, spreading rain into the southwest coast, which was quite heavy in some areas over the last 24 hours here over the western and southwest interior. And then today you can see the rain spreading across Bristol Bay, and that heavier precipitation now in the afternoon pushing into Cook Inlet and south central Alaska, with rain changing over to snow up over the west central interior during the afternoon hours. More rain for the southeast coast, and kind of looks like a few breaks here following into Bristol Bay behind the main area of precipitation. And once this pushed through Kodiak Island, they rose to 64 degrees this afternoon, which was the warmest location in the state. Anyway, at the surface here, low pressure tracked right up to the Yukon Delta, the warm front pushing northward. A lot of rain to the south here, southwesterly flow, several surges of moisture across the Gulf of Alaska, keeping it wet across the Panhandle and the North Gulf Coast areas there. But most of the heaviest amounts of rain were along and to the west of the Alaska Range, with Aniak, Togiak, and Stony River getting over an inch of rain in the last 24 hours. Bethel picked up 1 2/3 inches of rain, and Iliamna had the heaviest amount with just under 2 inches of rain. So a pretty widespread area of moderate to heavy rainfall here across the southwest, and anywhere from 1/4 inch to 2/3 of an inch falling across south central Alaska. And wet conditions extending back to the southwest here into the central Aleutians, and the cold front coming southward. Winds kicking up to 35 miles an hour at St. Paul, and those gusty northerly winds extending right back to the Bering Strait area. And also some pretty brisk easterly winds here over the northwest interior during the day today in the 15 to 25 mile per hour range. And for tonight, that low continues to push northeastward there. So again, snow into the Brooks Range, progressing up to the North Slope areas there. Kind of a mixture of conditions here along and just north of the warm front. Mostly rain south of the warm front and along the frontal boundary here as it pushes inland. Scattered showers back to the west, and then snow showers up over the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound area, and a mixture of rain or snow showers for the St. Lawrence Island area. And drying out, but those gusty north winds continuing through this area for tonight. Lighter winds back to the west with high pressure, and more rain, heavy at times North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle, and also rain heavy at times this evening for south central Alaska, and it stays wet across the Kuskokwim Valley. And for tomorrow, that low pushes right up to the northeast there off the eastern Arctic coast. Another center forms and pulls eastward, so that frontal boundary right across south central Alaska tomorrow, with rain continuing through the day. Again, periods of rain for the North Gulf Coast, rain heavy at times and breezy there for the Panhandle, and gusty northwest winds, rain and snow showers out over the eastern Bering Sea and along the coast, snow showers over the western interior, with snow beginning to lighten up now across the Brooks Range area. But look for snow across the north slope and the central Arctic coastal areas, and some more moisture approaching the northwest coast. Otherwise, scattered showers and windy across the Alaska Peninsula, but lighter winds back out over the western and southwest Bering Sea under high pressure. And then the outlook for Tuesday is a pretty intense low right over the Kenai Peninsula, so that's going to give storm force winds up to 55 knots across the Barren Islands out of the northwest there, with storm warnings also out for Kodiak Island. And colder air starting to come in now. This is pulling in the cold air from the west and northwest, so it looks like a band of snow from the northeast back down along the Alaska Range. And rain and snow during the morning hours, tending to become snow as the snowfall levels fall to near sea level during the afternoon hours. Otherwise, rain, heavy at times, North Gulf Coast. Another wet day here, and windier conditions for the Panhandle, with gale force southerlies in for Lynn Canal, looking at 35-knot winds, lighter winds to the south, and rain over the Copper River Basin and across the upper Tanana Valley and eastern interior. But more snow coming onto the northwest coast there, with that trough swinging inland from that low farther to the north in the Arctic there, but drying out here for the eastern Arctic coast into the north central interior. And some more rain sneaks into the Pribilof Islands, with that trough coming over the top of the high pressure area. And for temperatures this afternoon across the southeast coast, mostly in the lower to mid 50s, although Annette did push up to 57 earlier today. 50 degrees at Yakutat, Skagway, and Juneau. Mid to upper 40s along the North Gulf Coast. Seward hit 50 degrees, as did Gulkana, with some gusty south winds there. Lower to mid 40s over the, at Northway and Delta. Fairbanks 36 degrees and a little rain, and then snow 34 degrees at Tanana, with 36 at Fort Yukon. The Arctic coast, temperature in the upper 20s to lower 30s, with lower 30s here over the northwest interior, mid 30s the Seward Peninsula, 32 degrees at Huslia. Galena was 36, 39 with rain the entire day at McGrath, and then into the 50s here, mid 50s over the Bristol Bay area, with 51 both at Togiak and Bethel. 45 degrees at Macoriac, and upper 40s for the Pribilofs. It did reach 60 at False Pass today, 63 at Pilot Point. Otherwise, 50s back out to the west. And the lows for tonight in the teens and 20s north slope, mostly in the 20s along the Arctic coast. Otherwise, 30s here, again, warmer air spreading northward here over the central and eastern interior, with the colder air coming down from the northwest. Mid 30s here over the southwest interior. 40s Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, with upper 40s to lower 50s over the southeast coast. Highs for tomorrow near and into the lower 50s over south central Alaska. You can see the temperatures contrasted pretty well here from east-southeast back to the west and northwest, with the chillier air coming southward. Still should reach the lower 40s over the Pribilofs, with 30s back to the northwest, and along the Arctic coast, lower to mid 30s there, lower to mid 50s over the Panhandle. Flying weather, IFR all across the southeast coast tomorrow, back into the Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast, IFR across south central Alaska, and then northward right through the central interior up to the Arctic coast, with breaking out a little bit here behind the front. Marginal VFR in the forecast for much of the Bering Sea, except for the Bering Strait areas, and then some VFR farther out to the west over the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. Passes shaping up like this. Anatuvik, IFR conditions tomorrow. Same forecast for Adigan, IFR throughout the day. Lake Clark and Merrill, both IFR. Rainy looking IFR as well as windy. And for Isabel, looks like IFR in the southern approach, otherwise marginal. And from Antasta, we'll go marginal VFR with the lowest conditions on the south entrance. Tanita, marginal VFR. And Portage, occasional IFR. And for Chilkoot and White, both IFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet coming southward now into the Bering Sea, with 4,000 feet pushing back down to the Aleutians, and 8,000 feet pushing northward there behind that warm front all the way up into the southern upper Yukon Valley areas, with 4,000 feet all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast, and then 10,000 feet right across the Gulf of Alaska and the southern Panhandle. And for icing, look for Occasional moderate rime above 8,000 feet here over the southeast coast, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and from northeast Bristol Bay right up into the interior above about 6,000 feet. So then some areas of icing, rime and mixed icing here back to the west, mostly above 2,000 feet in the colder air. And for the winds aloft, upper level trough coming right onto the west coast tomorrow. Southwest flow keeps it wet ahead of the front there across much of south central Alaska and up over the eastern interior areas. With this trough will finally swing through on Tuesday and pull the colder air into the central interior. Otherwise, at 9,000 feet tomorrow, we've got 20 to 30 knot winds across the eastern Bering Sea and the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Southwest flow continues here over the southeast interior, up to 35 knots there across the Copper River Basin, 20 to 30 knot southwesterlies there for the Panhandle, and northerlies at about 15, but up to 25 knots there along the northwest coast. 3,000-foot winds, low center over the western Brooks Range area, and then another one up off the coast, and a pretty sharp trough here right along the Alaska Range, inching its way eastward, southwest flow, wet southwest flow ahead of that. Colder, more showery conditions on those northwesterlies coming in, 20 to 35 knots there from St. Lawrence Island across the eastern Bering Sea and across the Alaska Peninsula. And turbulence-wise, light to isolated moderate chop here all along the west coast, northern Bering Sea areas. Look for occasional widespread moderate here from the Pribilofs down to the eastern Aleutians and along and south of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise smooth here through the central or south central Alaska to the north, and then some turbulent conditions there over the northern Panhandle, back to Yakutat and over the Wrangell Mountains. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
The third priority is shelter. Your life raft protects you from the elements and provides you insulation. Keep it tidy. Use the baler to keep it dry.
Water was getting inside in the life raft. And that's one thing that was in the survival kit was a baler. We had to bail.
If you have 2 sponges, use one to mop up the salt water on the floor and the second sponge to recover some of the condensation which in cold climates will collect inside the canopy for drinking. Keep this second sponge only for fresh water. In poor weather, close all the openings to keep as warm and as dry as possible. Make sure the sea anchor, or drogue, has automatically deployed. The drogue is needed for stability and to keep you as close as possible to your last reported position. Adjust the length of line so that when you are on top of the wave, the drogue digs into the trough. There is a spare drogue in Solus A and B packs. If seas permit and you wish to travel further in the direction of wind and current, remove the drogue from the water. If you want to decrease your progress, redeploy it. The pump is used to keep the life raft fully inflated. The pump and valves in your raft may look and operate differently from those seen here. Inflatable floors do not inflate automatically. Find where to inflate the floor and inflate it. Even in tropical waters, you will want the floor inflated for insulation. Some floors do not inflate. They have built-in insulation.
Oh, I got one. What do you think this is for?
Yeah, let me see. I don't know. It's got threads on it.
Well, let me see here. Well, we know that this raft has pressure relief valves on the outside there, so I'm going to bet you it's a plug.
Rough seas may pound your life raft and cause air to be released through pressure relief valves outside the raft. Find the valve plugs in your pack and insert them if needed. Life raft repair packs vary from brand to brand. The metal clamps found in some brands work very well even in wet conditions. If your tear is small, you may need to cut it larger for the smallest clamp to work. Newly approved peel and stick patches are available for some types of raft material. Due to the water ballast pockets under the raft, you will find the paddles difficult for locomotion, but they can be used for navigating short distances.
Caleb, you're not looking too good there. Let me see if I can find something here to help you out in case you get sick. Here you go. Why don't you keep this nearby you?
All right.
Keep your shelter clean by using seasickness bags. Solus A and B packs have at least 2 thermal protective aids, or TPAs. In case additional thermal protection is needed, additional TPAs can be added during annual repacking. Your fourth priority is signals. On the radio, send a mayday. Take the EPIRB from your vessel, turn it on, tie it off, and leave it in the water. Even if you haven't turned it on, it will automatically activate and begin transmitting. EPIRBs are not a standard part of a Solus kit. Be sure to take it with you. Other signaling devices should be readily accessible to your lookout so they can be deployed quickly, as aircraft may be within sight for just a few seconds.
I saw the C-130. I figured we better try at least get a parachute flare off because he knew where we were. So I waited for him to take a bank towards us where his line of visibility would be down towards us at least give us the best chance of survival. And so I shot it.
Practice aiming your mirror by lining up your target in the notch between 2 fingers and shining the light in the notch. Mirrors will work even on cloudy days. Solus A and B packs contain smoke, handheld, and parachute flares. Ask your life raft repacker to explain how the flares in your raft operate. They may operate differently than the ones on your vessel. Different brands operate differently. Read the instructions on the flares before you need to operate them at night or in rough seas.
Hey, you guys, I got a parachute flare here. I'm going to shoot it just in case somebody's out there. I don't see anybody, but just in case.
In general, fire 1 parachute flare right away to alert rescuers who might be just over the horizon. Hold the rest until you can see vessels or planes. With the flare in your hand as shown, aim the flare at a 65 to 80 degree angle above the horizon. Turn your face away and fire. Do not fire at rescuers. Parachute flares shoot a projectile 1,000 feet. Be prepared for a kick like a firearm when firing. Handheld flares drip slag. Solus grade flares drip less slag than non-Solus flares. This is why only Solus flares are packed in life rafts. They should still be held well away from the raft, horizontal and downwind to avoid damaging the raft. Different handheld flares also have different firing mechanisms. Smoke is especially useful on calm days. Helicopter rescue pilots also find smoke useful to judge wind direction. The cans of smoke float, and due to the heat they produce, they should be tossed into the water well away from the raft. A copy of life-saving signals is included in Solus A and B packs. The whistle is 3 to 5 times louder than the human voice. The flashlight has an extra bulb and batteries. The life raft also has an external-internal dome light. It can be disconnected when not needed during the day. The canopy also has light-reflecting tape. Other items may be used as signaling devices. Use your imagination. The fifth priority, water, is only found in Solus A packs. 1.5 liters for each person the life raft is designed to carry. Water is essential for all body functions, including thinking and fine motor skills. You will probably already be dehydrated when you enter the life raft.
It wasn't long, about an hour into the raft, that we actually got thirsty, or some of us got thirsty, which was surprising, that quick. I said, geez, it'd be nice to have some water, and then it took me a second to recollect that there actually was water in the raft.
Despite information to the contrary, do not ration water for the first 24 hours. Drink as needed.
Hey, we better drink some of this water. You hold on to 2. Those are yours.
You need water to function efficiently before and during the rescue. Most rescues occur within 72 hours. Determine a way to distribute water fairly and equally. Use the graduated drinking vessel found in the Solus A pack. Use this or other containers to gather and store rainwater through the rainwater collection hose. Don't forget to collect your condensation from the inside of the roof, especially in cold climates. Water is usually packed in foil pouches, but Solus A packs are still required to have 3 tin can openers.
3 can openers. What could we use this for?
Oh, you guys know I grabbed a can off the galley table on the way off the boat.
Can of food?
Quail eggs in brine.
Wow, those are mine. Right on, Caleb. Hey, let's open those up.
That's great. Let's eat on these.
That's
Good
awesome. Well, have either of you ever eaten quail eggs?
Not in a can.
Welcome back. Well, small craft advisories over the inside waters tomorrow for south to southeast winds, 25 knots with 5-foot seas. Southerly winds at about 20 knots here along the outer coastline with seas running 7 to 9 feet. And then for Tuesday, tighter gradient means gale force winds for Lynn Canal south 35 knots, and small craft advisories for south to southeast winds for the central and southern inside waters. And along the coast, pretty uniform wind direction and speed, south 30 knots with seas 14 to 16 feet. And for the North Gulf Coast for tomorrow, southerly winds at about 20 knots, Prince William Sound southeast at 15. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, Shelikof Strait, and Kodiak Island, all southwest at 25, and southerlies 15 to 20 knots for Cook Inlet. Then for Tuesday, looking at storm force westerlies for the Barren Islands up to 55 knots with 17-foot seas, west winds 50 knots there on the east side of Kodiak Island with 18-foot seas, and 45-knot westerlies for Shelikof Strait. Small craft advisories for Cook Inlet, north of the Forelands, northerly winds northwest 30, south of the Forelands, that extends down across Kamishak Bay, and gale warnings out from the North Gulf Coast for southwesterlies 35 to 40 knots, but northeast at 20 in the marine forecast for Prince William Sound. And for Bristol Bay, and actually the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, all areas northwest 30 knots with seas 8 to 9 feet here on the Pacific side and running 9 to 11 feet on the Bering Sea side. For Tuesday, gale warnings out for all areas here, northwesterlies 35 knots from Bristol Bay all the way to Cape Sarachev, and then on the south side there up to Kodiak Island, northwest winds 40 knots with 12 to 14-foot seas. And out over the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, northerly winds 30 knots with 9 to 12-foot seas, much lighter winds out over the western Aleutians with high pressure right around in this area, northeasterlies at about 20, and northerlies 25 to 30 knots for Adak and Atka. And then for Tuesday, southerly winds increase to small craft advisory levels for the western Aleutians, and pretty light here, southwesterlies at about 15 for the central areas, and the eastern Aleutians, west and northwest, 20 to 30 knots with seas running 6 to 11 feet. And for the southwest coast, northwesterlies 25 knots north of Nunivak Island, and south of the island, northwesterlies at 30 knots, northwest 30 for the Pribilofs and the northern Bering Sea with 11-foot seas. And then for Tuesday, Winds come down St. Lawrence Island to about 20 knots, but we've got 30 to 35 knot winds here along the southwest coast with 10 to 12 foot seas. And westerlies stay pretty brisk here for the Pribilofs all the way up to St. Matthew Island, right out of the west at 30 knots. And up along the eastern Arctic coast, I've got small craft advisories, southeasterlies at 30 knots tomorrow, easterlies 15 to 20 knots for the eastern and central coast, northerlies or north-northwesterlies here for the entire west side, but from Wales to Cape Thompson, northerlies at 30 knots with 7 foot seas. And then for Tuesday, small craft advisories here in the west from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, west-northwesterlies at 25. Westerly winds for the remainder of the Arctic coast all the way over to Demarcation Point at 20 knots with seas 5 to 7 feet. And looking at tonight's forecast again, this low leaves the Yukon Delta and pushes up to the northeast that brings winter storm warnings out for the Brooks Range. You're looking for 6 to 8 inches of snow, the heaviest amounts falling tonight, becoming lighter tomorrow. Warmer air behind the warm front here, so rain south of the warm front and along the frontal boundary, rain heavy at times south central Alaska, North Gulf Coast, and the southeast coast, all wet, and also a band of rain extending southwestward across Bristol Bay to the Alaska Peninsula. Colder air still back up here to the northwest, but coming southward on those gusty north and northwest winds. Mixed rain and snow showers along the southwest coast tomorrow, snow showers over the western interior. This low pulling eastward, look for rain tomorrow across all of south central Alaska, rain heavy at times along the southeast coast, and the snow lightening up but stays cloudy and snowy for the north slope and the Arctic coast. And then more snow advances to the western Arctic coast there, probably as far south as Kivalina, snow showers in the west, a strong low over the Kenai Peninsula with lowering snow levels. Have a great
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.